Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. In this episode, we are going to provide you with strategies to stay cool under pressure. Before we begin, remember to support the podcast. Since Ron and I research everything, we researched this as well. Turns out we're pretty on top of it already. So here are specific ways you can support us. You can listen to the podcast. This seems like a no-brainer, but it's really important. Try to catch as many episodes as possible. Talk about the podcast when you're among friends and coworkers and family. Share it out. And most importantly, review the podcast. Rate us, review us. We appreciate it so much. Also, if you watch YouTube or Rumble, please like and subscribe. And here's a big ask. If you are on YouTube and Rumble primarily, help us reach our top 20 podcasts in the U.S. in this category by ensuring that you're also going and listening to it as well. Thank you so much. So before we get into it, Ron's going to share the quote of the week. And thank you, everybody, again, for all the submissions. We've received so many great ones.
We really do have so many submissions, and we're grateful. This one came from Kit Bell Lemon, and I love it. It says, some people won't understand your words, while some won't even need words to understand you. And Kristin, we've talked a lot about body language, but there's also this chemistry. There's a connection. And did you have a friend growing up that you guys could just look at each other and know what each other was thinking?
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to ask me again about the girl on the playground with the booger, but thank you for... Yeah, no. I did have, no, I know what you're saying. Yeah, definitely have had those. Still do. It's wonderful.
You know, sometimes even Kristin and I on the podcast, we kind of know what each other's thinking. Yeah. I was making her laugh before we got on the podcast. But that's a beautiful thing, because if you have the right aura, if you have the right demeanor and someone gets to know you, they can really understand you without words. And that's a powerful thing for sure.
Yeah, no, it really is. What was happening was I said, oh, look, we matched today. Since I'm wearing a black jacket and Ron's wearing a white shirt with black stripes. And he said, yeah, you're not dressed like a harlot.
Kristin, don't do it.
Last week I was wearing cheetah.
Listen, if you're listening, I only use the word harlot because it's old. It's biblical. And
it's hysterical.
She jokes with me about using old
I think
terms.
It's amazing. I was laughing so hard that I couldn't even bring my smile down to get the first opening line out. So
remember when I said good. Bloomers? You love that one.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, goodness.
Let's get to the topic.
Okay. All right. So staying cool, calm, and collected when you're under pressure is not always easy, but it's a great skill to cultivate, and it can be cultivated. Whether you're handling personal issues, juggling deadlines at work, or just trying to navigate this wild ride that we call life, especially nowadays. Yeah. Learning tools to help you stay grounded when things get tense is very important. So starting off with, how do you react when the pressure gauge rises? Do you panic, stress out, or let your anxiety take the wheel? If you do, you're not alone. Believe me in that, you're not alone. But with that said, imagine how different things could be if you could easily keep cool, remain calm, and stay collected instead. Now, Ron, I'm sure given your industry, talk to me about something or a situation that you've had to stay cool under pressure in.
Oh my gosh, Kristin, if I had to describe my whole career, it would have been pressure. I think I had so many different situations that I found myself in, but I decided to go way back in the day and just tell a funny story I think our listeners will appreciate. When I was a deputy sheriff, you had to rotate and occasionally work the courtroom. And, you would basically bring papers up to the clerk to hand to the judge, those kind of things. But you had to do the intro of the judge. And it's so funny, even to this day, I still have it memorized. It's, oh yes, the Circuit Court of Buchanan County is now in session. The Honorable Nicholas E. Person, judge presiding. I won't do the whole thing. But fortunately, they did tell me you need to memorize this because you have to say it sometime. So I've mentioned before, there's a little bit of initiation with police officers. So I'm working the courtroom with an experienced officer, and we were talking, and he said, "Do you want to do the intro?" I said, No, I just started. I'll do it next time. I want to make sure I have it memorized. He said, "No worries. Don't worry about it." So the courtroom is like a box, and the judge was coming from one end of the box, and me and the other deputy are facing each other, guarding two different doors, entryways to the courtroom. So just as the judge is walking in, and by the way, this is a very strict judge. No humor, no anything, very strict. He was a Yale graduate and just by the book.
One of those.
So we're standing there. He walks out. The other deputy literally just steps right on out the door.
Oh, jeez.
I'm standing in a full courtroom. The judge is standing there waiting on this intro. And I thought I was going to die, Kristin. And I remember, I think I sounded like I was crying. I went, "Oh, yes. The circuit."
Oh my God.
Somehow I made it through.
Wow.
And from for probably several hours after the judge was on the bench, I'm staring at that other deputy like, I'm going to kick your.
Oh, yeah. Do you think he did it on purpose?
Oh, yes. It was a total setup. It was to initiate
gosh.
me. It was a total setup. Oh, wow. He was over there. Like when he came back in, he had that grin on his face. He knew that he had gotten me good.
Wow.
But I got it out. So that's what counts.
Goodness.
But there's going to be in life, there's always times that we're going to be under pressure. And I've said this before, Kristin. It is a beautiful thing to watch someone who can handle pressure and still make decisions. I've seen leaders, and I tried to aspire to that will walk into chaos and bring consistency and normalcy to chaos.
Right.
And it is the most powerful thing to watch.
Yeah, no, I think it is incredible. I've never been attracted to the leader that's the hair on fire type of leader. They make you feel they turn an environment that really could be relatively neutral into this chaotic, tense environment. I'll add a story first of really where I haven't been in control. They say the stomach is the second brain, right? And so, and I'm not the only one who's experienced this, but when you're a bank manager, especially when you run an actual location that handles cash and all of that, you're audited a couple times a year. And so I was an actual branch manager before I went into the back office leadership. And oh gosh, I think I was audited probably over 20 different times. And I would get the runs every single time. The auditor, I would see her walking up to the front door and my stomach just went. And that was where you can be outwardly in control, but internally you're freaking out and it comes out that way. No pun intended. But something else where an example of when I stayed cool under pressure, we had, this was just in this past October. I was the co-host of this major event here in the Northwest, and we lost power right in the middle of it. I'm talking, we have speakers, like 1,000 different audience members. Like it was insane. Completely lost mics, lights, everything. Stage, dark, everything. So we had to immediately figure it out. And we brought the audience, had them all gather around. We had to found the loudest speaker with a booming voice where he was able to talk without a mic and everyone could still hear him. But we were sweating bullets for a little bit there, but the show must go on. So you just get going. You take a few seconds to gravel and then you got to move. You got to get going. So that one was a success for us. And the lights finally came back on after about a half hour.
Well,
wow.
We will get into it, but you and some others had an attitude, we've got to make this happen. And that's the beginning of success right there.
Right, exactly.
All right, let's dig a little deeper. Staying calm under pressure is not just a handy skill, it's a life enhancer. It means not losing it when the kids are having a meltdown, your significant other is getting on your last nerve, you get laid off, and I know that's really tough. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when the bills are piling up, or when things don't go according to plan. I'm probably making people nervous right now just hearing this. It's maintaining your composure during challenging meetings, tight deadlines, or when dealing with difficult customers or colleagues or people, as we said. when you can maintain your composure in that, that's the highest form of maturity. I told you once, Kristin, an old Japanese instructor told me that controlling your emotion, or he said it this way, emotional control is the height of maturity. And it didn't resonate until later in life, but that is so true. And we encourage you right now, if you're dealing with anxiety, and I'm not talking about something where you need a counselor, but if you're dealing with anxiety, please listen to this entire episode. There's nuggets placed in there throughout, and we always do that. And I know I have had people say, yeah, I didn't get to finish, but if you listen to the whole episode, I believe you're going to find some much needed peace and help in your situation.
Right.
So here's a question that no one ever asks, but it helps you to have that internal conversation. When you're feeling nervous, ask yourself, is this a situational response or is this a long-term effect? And what I mean by that is, sometimes let's say you got in a fender bender or you have to give a talk. That is a situational response. It's isolated to that one incident. And we're going to get the ways that you can overcome that. Now, long-term would be like taking care of an elderly family member. And here's the unique part about that. Yes, that's challenging. And for some people, giving a talk is just as challenging. But what we're going to share with you, these techniques and strategies will help you in either circumstance. It's just you have to brace up for the long-term haul if it is one of those long-term effects that you're dealing with. But most of the things that we deal with are situational, and they should not create the issues that they do.
Right.
Remember, nervousness is a natural reaction to a perception that something could be dangerous or create the perception of danger. Let me give you an example. Let's say you are afraid of public speaking, and this was an ongoing battle that I've shared, Kristin, so I won't go back into it. But your brain, even though, what's the worst thing? It's not like you're going to, somebody's going to attack you unless you're in politics. But seriously, you're getting up in front of the class. What's the big deal? You're not in danger, but guess what? Your brain cannot interpret the difference. So in other words, a lot of the responses, the physiological responses that you get getting up in front of a classroom is just like if you were getting ready to get in a fight. It's a really unique thing about the brain. So your brain is taking all of this data and it's turning it's engaging that fight or flight response. And our brain doesn't know the difference. So that's why I said you have to start with, this is a situational, this is like, there's a time frame on this. I remember telling myself before, 30 minutes, this will all be over. 30 minutes, this will all be over. Reminding myself when I was gonna speak. So
right,
just a little bit more. We don't want to get too scientific here on fight or flight. A number of factors can influence our tendency to freak out during intense situations, including a genetic predisposition to anxiety. And Kristin, that is very important because there is such thing as there are nervous children. They grow up and they're nervous, but what happens is parents either ignore that, enable that. They don't do the right things to help a child who has those type of reactions.
Right.
Parents, listen up. Number one, be careful of your own behavior. Don't think if you're constantly using words, I'm worried, I'm frustrated, I can't believe this is happening. If you're doing that, that's going to move right over into your child.
Oh, yeah.
So you can enable that and almost put them on a pedestal to worry. My little grandson, he loves to go, oh no. So I, of course, I probably drive my daughter crazy because I'm Mr. Positive and tough guy around him, but I'm like, there's nothing to say, oh no, this is, oh great. Like we couldn't find a puzzle piece. Oh no. So, or if he injures his finger, his grandmother wants to kiss the finger and I tell him, shake it off. You're all right. Let's go. So just a little difference in parenting style.
Yeah. Well, and I am one of these kids. Like at 3 years old, I was showing signs of anxiety. And I do think I'm predispositioned to it. My dad has it. But he, unlike, and my son now, my 9-year-old son, I can tell that he's showing some of the signs. So I'm really, really, really hyper aware of how I react. To your point here, I try to just, anytime he's concerned, I can just tell. I'm like, no big deal. That you're totally fine. Really, really dumb it down to where he's not concerned anymore. And I don't think my dad did that.
Kristin, I'm telling you, careful. You will probably, now I didn't look this up. So this is, scientist Ron Ward. I guarantee you're going to reduce his anxiety levels by probably 70% by doing what you're doing, because it's perception.
Right.
The brain is perceiving this danger, but if you've got mother who they respect and look up to saying it's not dangerous,
Right.
there's nothing like comforting words. So you're doing the right thing, and you just got to keep doing that.
Well,
but
thank you.
Imagine if you were doing the opposite.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I read the funniest meme the other day. This little girl came in and said, "Mommy, there's a monster in my room. Can I sleep with you?" And the mother says, "Are you kidding? I'm not going to let the monster follow you in here and kill me. Go back to bed."
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that wouldn't go over with my kids.
I don't think it would with either. I think it was a joke,
gosh.
But it was funny.
That is.
So just keep in mind, there is such thing as genetic predisposition. Recognize it, just like Kristin has, and deal with it. And understand that's normal function of the brain. Now, Loretta Graziano, Breuning, PhD, author of Habits of a Happy Brain, goes into that. And I only read an excerpt, but it looked like it's really good. We already discussed the amygdala. That was our word of the day last week, I think. But we're going to take it just a little bit further for you brainiacs out there. The hippocampus is located in the medial temporal lobe. And this hippocampus works in conjunction with the amygdala. And when I said that it stores memories, the hippocampus plays an important role in that as well. It's to help you recall memories. The beauty is, again, with good memories, you're going to recall good things. So you got to regulate the brain. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the emotions are seated in that amygdala, and the hippocampus, again, is working with the amygdala. So I don't know of anyone that ever looked at me when I was in elementary school or otherwise and said, "Ron, control your emotions. Ron, don't get emotional. Ron, stop acting like you're scared of this." No one, not a mentor, not anyone. And that needs to be spoken to children. That needs to be spoken sometimes to friends. I told a friend not long ago, "You're overreacting. Get it in check." One time, this is when I was working with the church youth group, but I let this guy lead, he's a phenomenal leader now. If he hears this, he might be mad at me. But he does a podcast as well, by the way. He was getting agitated, and people exhibit, their anxiety in different ways, but the kids weren't doing what he said. He starts yelling at them. So I'm back in the sound booth. So I just motioned for him with the old finger, the signal we talked about. He walked back, and he still brings this up. I said 3 words to him. I leaned over. He's way down there. I said, "Drop the attitude." He walked back off, and he was all good. I didn't say that to be cool. I'm saying sometimes that's all it takes.
Right.
So if you will monitor yourself, if you'll be your own regulator, you can go, "Whoa, wait a minute. I don't need to flip them off. I'm never going to see the person again.
Right.
They pass me or they cut me off, but what good's it going to do?"
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about in self-regulation.
Yeah, that's huge. That's actually a pet peeve of mine when you're riding with somebody and they get road ragey or they honk. I'm not a fan of the honker. Unless someone's about to hit your vehicle, I think you need to just chill out.
I figured you brought that back from New York. I've been in cabs. They honk.
I'm not into it.
Honest to God, they honk, I think, every time they chew gum.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. My in-laws are honkers too. And I'll be honest, it just stresses me out. My husband actually doesn't anymore. He's like, especially given just the hypersensitivity of everyone's on edge these days, you could honk at the wrong person. You don't want to do anything to set somebody off. And, unless they're literally about to back into your car or anything like that, leave them alone and just chill out when you're driving and just be thankful.
People get killed over road rage now, folks.
Exactly. So just be thankful
smart.
that you're safe in your car and you're aware of your surroundings. Don't be that idiot that's in your car raging and cursing and
you've got
punching
a good
the
podcast.
Ceiling.
And you've got a good podcast to listen to.
Just listen to the podcast and chill out. All right, let's get into a little more of the technical stuff. Trust me, folks, this is interesting. The more you know, the more you can control. Right, Ron?
That's my quote, Kristin. Thank you for using it.
You're welcome. All right. So when we are nervous, scared, excited, or angry, Our body releases cortisol, which is a steroid hormone that your adrenal glands, the endocrine glands on top of your kidneys, produce and release. Cortisol affects several aspects of your body and mainly helps regulate your body's response to stress. So elevated cortisol, through its influence on metabolic processes, may contribute directly to increased energy and lower fatigue, which is in turn helping protect against negative effects and or helping to boost the positive effects. The highest levels are between 8 and 9 a.m. for most individuals. And that's really God's way of saying, get up and get something done. Yeah. Right? I mean, gosh.
However, as good as cortisol just sounded, because it does help us, we got stress and eustress. Eustress is a good stress, energy, all of that stuff. Long-term activation of the stress response system and too much exposure to cortisol and other stress hormones can disrupt almost all of the body's processes. Can even give you the runs, Kristin.
Can attest to that.
This puts you at a higher risk of many health problems, including anxiety and depression. One study found that a diet high in added sugar, refined greens, and saturated fat led to significantly higher cortisol levels than a diet high in whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and polyunsaturated fats. So even our diet can affect our moods. Kristin, tell us about anxiety control. Let's get into the meat and potatoes.
Absolutely. So remaining level-headed under pressure doesn't mean you do not need to take things seriously or quit caring. It's actually quite the opposite. It means that you can think clearly, analyze situations objectively, and make the best possible decisions. It's about responding rather than reacting and being proactive instead of reactive. Staying calm under pressure boosts resilience and adaptability, enhances focus and productivity, and improves performance and decision-making. It creates a positive, manageable environment and also serves as an inspiration and stability anchor for others around you. So as we've said, you'll be happier and healthier altogether.
It's true. And Kristin, I don't know if we get into it, but we have talked about the hippocampus and the amygdala. When you are stressed out, you cannot make good decisions. Even if we're not talking about, road rage where you're yelling and screaming, not that. It's those small, intricate details. It's when you just can't think of something or you just can't organize. You can't prioritize.
Right.
So all of this works together. You're going to be so much more successful and have such a better ability to function at work and life and all of this. So it's very important. So stay with us. Stay with us. Do not turn off the podcast. You've got to hear this. We're going to give you 5 tips to stay cool under pressure. These simple strategies can help steady your nerves when the heat is on. Fortunately, for those of us whose composure flees at the first sign of trouble, we can learn to stay level-headed, says positive psychology researcher Michelle Gielan, author of Broadcasting Happiness, and I love the name of that book, The Science of Igniting and Sustaining Positive Change. Having certain strategies prepared in advance when you're not in a pressure situation can be very helpful when those moments arrive, she explains. And we've talked about it as well, Kristin. You don't play a basketball game until you've had months of practice.
Right.
So, but yet we think we can go through life with no strategies and no practice. Anyway, for situations that you can anticipate, maybe you tense up every time you get into bumper to bumper traffic, or you're dreading an upcoming meeting to discuss
I get stressed out going to Trader Joe's. Have you been in those checkout lines?
No, but I just went to Buc-ee's, the largest Buc-ee's, I think, in the United States. It was unbelievable, but everyone was happy.
Gosh.
It was almost like you were at a fair or something. It's crazy. But anyway, Gielan suggests training like an athlete, gearing up for competition. Wow. You might practice deep breathing exercise even when there's a traffic light, or rehearse your salary negotiation with a friend. And Kristin, I told you about traffic. What I would do is get off an exit and go to a coffee shop if I could, unless I had something pressing that morning. Turn on your favorite song, something like that. For those high pressure moments you can't foresee, these strategies can help you build perseverance, de-escalate panic, and keep your cool. And that's what this whole episode is about.
Yeah.
Get into those 5 things for us, Kristin.
Yeah. Number 1, focus on now. Our brains are designed to anticipate danger. For many people, this creates a flow of threats that are hard to turn off. So in high pressure situations, our minds often race ahead or loop back, stirring up anxiety about what could go wrong or ruminating over past mishaps. Mindfulness, however, allows us to reel our attention back into the now, into the present. It empowers us to break free from these stresses, these stress-inducing thought patterns, and make room for calm and clarity. So how do we do that? That's the big question, right? So instead of getting swept up in the stress of a nerve-wracking meeting or a challenging project, you'll find a steady anchor in the present moment. A mindful attitude means that you're aware of the pressure, but you remain calm, focused, and clear-headed instead of letting it control you. You check in with yourself. Am I okay? I am calm. I am not in danger.
Okay, number 2, treat deep breathing as your friend. I got introduced to deep breathing a little bit later in my career, and I so wish that I had learned this principle before. But there's several different ones. I do 4, 7, and 8. You breathe in 4, hold 7 seconds, exhale 8. I do that a lot of times just to fall asleep. But there's also a grounded breath, and I've talked about it before, but it's coming from the diaphragm. And when you do that, it disrupts blood flow and all of these things that start to happen when the nervous system is starting to get out of whack. You know, you get the sympathetic nervous system starting to take over the parasympathetic. And it causes all this to start happening. You can shut it down quickly. And if you do it regularly, you're training the brain to say, I'm chill. Everything's okay. So begin to start working on throughout the day, just a deep breath. That's all you got to do. I know it sounds silly. I used to make fun of it until I really got deeper into martial arts and I started realizing the calming effect and how you can teach yourself to relax.
Oh, yeah. It's so important. Even when, I don't know if you ever did this like early in working out where you found yourself holding your breath during a set.
Exactly.
I know, right? It's like I did that when I was first working out at the gym, and I used to hold my breath during gymnastics routines. And you really, once you gain control of your breathing, it really opens doors and you become that much better. I know I listened to the Drew Pruitt podcast, and it's a health podcast. And one of his guests recently said, I will not miss my morning breathing routine. I will miss an airplane or miss a flight before I miss a breathing routine. And it's wild because I was like, wow, that's extreme. But then just the other day, I was hearing that the Wim Hof breathing, or the breathing like you're talking about, that if you do it regularly for like daily for a certain set of time, you're adding about 7 years onto your life on average. So it just shows you the power of deep breathing, not just our shallow breathing that we all do every day. Deep, Kristin, mindful breathing.
You probably know this. Our listeners may find this interesting if they've not heard this before, but babies breathe deeply. And then as we get older, just like other parts of ourselves, we get lazy. And you said it, it's lazy breathing because it just takes a little bit of effort to take a small breath, and it takes more effort to take a deep breath. Again, my cold shower, one of the first things you learn to do is regulate your breathing. So I don't allow myself to go when I get in, when the water goes cold. I keep my breathing regulated.
Yes. Huge. Okay. Number 3, expect the best, not the worst. So there's no reason to expect the worst when you're stressed. Instead, imagine the scenario playing out positively. That's that mindfulness. Picture yourself handling it smoothly and confidently. Visualization is a powerful technique that boosts your confidence and prepares your mind for success. And I will share something that goes along with it, but remind yourself of other things that you have overcome. Plaster sticky notes if you have to. You've got this. But the visualization, I've talked about how as a gymnast, and I had a Bulgarian Olympic medal coach who taught us all sorts of mindfulness and visualization. But something else I don't like, this is just a random factoid of me, but it takes a lot of visualization and mindfulness to get through it. I don't like when you go to the dentist and they do the numbing. I don't like when I can't move. It just, the paralyzation of my face just makes me crazy. And so I actually do dental work without any numbing. And I'll be, people think I'm completely crazy, but what helps me get through is, one, I know I visualized and I can kind of separate mind from body. But the other piece is, I know that as soon as the dental work's done, I'm good. I walk out the door. I don't have a droopy face where I can't drink anything. And it all takes that mindfulness and visualization, and I can do it. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't work out.
Kristin, you just moved to a whole new level. Like
I
one minute you had the runs and now you're getting dental work without getting numb.
I know.
Are you sure? Have you
my
had
dad
a
does
filling?
it too. My dad does it too.
Have you had a filling, a root canal or anything like that?
Okay, so this is just, I actually had my front 2 teeth veneered because I busted them out. Long story. But I did that without any numbing. And I've also done just cavity type deal without numbing. So a root canal, I think that's a different situation because that I can't even fathom. But my dad's the exact same way. He doesn't get numbing.
Don't try this at home, folks. Kristin's a professional.
And your dentist will not like you, I promise you.
I have a dentist appointment tomorrow, Kristin. Thank
you. Ask him how he would feel about a patient that doesn't get.
I make them sign an NDA, so if I cry, they can never. Number 4, Kristin, I'm going to give you the cheesiest play on words, but you're never going to forget it. And by the way, this is not in the notes. Kristin can vouch. It just came to me. We've talked a lot. Practice mindfulness. Most of the time, it's mindful mess, where our minds is just full of a mess. And just like we clean the house, just like we take out the trash, clean up your mind. So you want mindfulness, not a mindful mess.
I like it.
As you focus, change the narrative. Kristin already said it, but it's in here almost twice to remind you to get in a quiet place. I remember one time we were in complete chaos in a situation. I was at work and I didn't let the staff know what I was doing. I said, "Excuse me." I walked out. I went in my office. I did some breathing exercise. I stood up. I didn't have time to even go sit at my desk. I stood by the door and I walked back in, at least as much as they knew. Sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. I've heard people criticize that, but if you're in leadership, trust me, nobody wants to see you biting your nails and crying. Right. You walk in and you make it happen. But I went back downstairs, took control of the situation, and as always, we got through it. And the problem is you have trouble visualizing that success, but you got to say, and I like to say, remember those past victories. You've done it once, you can do it again.
Right.
All right.
I think that's amazing. You should TM that before someone else does.
Trademark
it. I think that's great. Okay. Number 5, avoid multitasking. And I'm a huge multitasker, but I completely agree with that statement because you're only partially putting yourself into multiple things. So here's a truth bomb. Multitasking is a stress magnet. It scatters your attention and your energy, leaving you more prone to errors and to being overwhelmed. So focus on one task at a time. Your mind and your to-do list will thank you. Focus on the task at hand. Pre-planning prevents poor performance. And that is so true. So many of us feel that we have to respond to a text message or an email or an instant message like as soon as they come in. And that's programming. We don't have to do that. I empower you. I've said this in early episodes. If you have a deadline or something that you're working on, I know, Ron, you preach this too. You need to put it on your calendar, block it out. I know I used to turn my instant message function off. It would say in quiet mode, you turn it off, close your email browser so that you can actually focus and get things done, because those constant incoming distractions will take you into a different direction and it'll take a while to get your mind back on track. So you have to do what you can to stay focused. And as much as we all say, I'm an amazing multitasker, you're never going to be able to do 5 things at once soundly.
Well, and another step to that, Kristin, is we're talking about stressful times. There's a time, I had to multitask when I was academy director, and I still do. But if you know that, let's say I just coached someone 2 days ago, the final coaching call on a job interview. I told this person block off an hour because we're going to actually run through a mock interview. So this person didn't need to be doing anything else. They need to be focused on what we're doing. So in those difficult times, it requires your focus instead of multitasking. Even if you do something to distract yourself, it don't need to be 100 different things.
Right.
And sometimes we just get nervous and we just start doing everything. We're fidgeting, and none of that's counterproductive.
Yeah, exactly.
Kristin, we're going to put in a bonus. And we have never billed this as a religious podcast. It's a leadership podcast. But here's the truth. If you ever, almost anywhere, and sometimes in the world, if there's a death, if there's an emergency, the family gets called in, who do they call in? They call in a priest. They call in a pastor, a reverend, whatever your faith is. And there's a power to that many times the corporate world, especially the woke world, they won't even acknowledge that. But even in the 12-step programs, you acknowledge a higher power.
True.
And there is nothing better than knowing that. And for me, I'm of the Christian faith. I know you are as well, Kristin, and I don't attack people's faith. But the point is that it is so reassuring, because I've been in some really dangerous situations, and I'm sure some other people listening have as well. It's very comforting for me to know that I have a God who loves me and that I can pray to in my time of need. And unfortunately, I've had times in my life, that's the only time I prayed was, God, if you can get me through this time.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a scripture, Philippians 4:13, that says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I think that's one of the most powerful scriptures that I've ever read. I've quoted it numerous times. And people tune in this podcast to hear our advice. And this is part of my advice, is you believe, use your faith when you are being challenged, when you're in that situation. Pray and believe that something good is going to happen and the creator of the universe is on your side. And ultimately we win.
Yep, absolutely.
And it provides a great deal of assurance and strength and everything good.
Well, thanks for that bonus. I love it.
Yeah. I was glad to do it.
Yeah.
So, Kristin, this, I say this a lot, but this to me is one of the most important. Now, there's about 4 or 5 of our episodes. I like them all, but I'm saying if I started a company right now, there's 4 or 5 episodes, and I think I'm going to put those together, get you to do some marketing on it, because if I were onboarding, there's about 5 or 6 of our episodes
like
so far that I would make that a starter pack. I like it. Write that down. I'm serious about that, but this is the key to life. I listen to, I'm very observant. You said you're a people watcher.
Oh yeah.
And I listen to people around. I hear the words they speak, the body language, the things they're worried about. And it's not that they're not legitimate. It's just they should not be debilitating.
Right.
There's always reality that we're dealing with, but let's be honest, most of the time you're still fine.
Right.
Now, if you fell out of a plane, your parachute won't open. Hey,
they get a pass.
We'll give you a pass. But most of the time, truthfully, I think back about some of the things I worried about, some of the things I got so upset about, and there's just a memory now.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Right. Oh, I think about the same thing also, especially just in corporate America. I think about what I used to get so worked up over and lose sleep over. I'm like, wow, that's wild. Such a different person today.
Kristin, before we go, I can tell a difference in you, by the way, from the time you and I first started talking.
Really? Interesting.
I really can.
I like it. Is this a positive difference?
I didn't say that. I'm kidding.
I know. I'm like, wait, let me double check. Oh my gosh.
Well, you started to say something that I in my brain, I don't want to work on, but when you said you feel like you have to text back, how many times have you texted me, Kristin, all hours, and you get a text back?
At all hours?
Well, I'm just saying, when you text me, you're going to get a response, correct?
Oh, right. Yeah, you're
You send on a text sometimes, not being critical.
I do.
I'm just saying, when I ran the academy, you had to respond all the time. And I've not been able to break that habit. Or maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. But I've had people say that before, like, I always respond if I can. And we had a rule, that you get back to people. So good or bad, folks, you can tell us.
I eventually get back. No, I think I am. I have been working, especially homeschooling. It's hard. I have to make sure that I set aside time, like where I'm like, okay, I'm not on my phone during this chunk of time. Otherwise, with all of my social media and text message groups and everything coming in, it would just be nonstop distractions.
I think that's wise. And here's the other thing is we're in different seasons of life. Like I have no life. So why wouldn't I text? All right. We've rambled on.
Amazing. A little bonus for those who waited till the end.
Folks, go out there and conquer the day. You've got this. We believe in you. We're invested. And, we're going to keep rock and rolling. So be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.